You're listening to a podcast for the deep thinker, seeker of growth and spiritual transformation, where intellect meets intuition.
So, we know the music industry is under a lot of attack in terms of just so many things coming out about Diddy and all that kind of stuff coming out. So, what's been your experience of the music industry?
Well, I think I would probably use the word spotlight. I think that is what's happening right now with the music industry. I think there's a lot of eyes on what's actually going on behind the scenes. I feel like for the first time in a very long time, people are actually questioning, like, what happens in those meetings, when those contracts are being signed. What happens to those artists when they are tied into these huge deals that lock them down for years and years and years. And I think that never used to happen. People just took it at face value. There was no questioning. If someone spotted your child or whatever and said they're really talented, I can make them successful, then I think there was a very common practice of parents saying, yes, that's amazing, take them, do what you do. And, without really questioning the intention behind it or really considering for that child's or that person's safety. And I think if we look at what's been happening in the media with the whole spotlight on Diddy's empire, for example, I think we're getting to a time where people are starting to use their critical thinking skills and actually challenge the narrative that's presented by the media and challenge the lifestyle that's promoted. And it looks very shiny, it looks very glamorous, but that is a very perfect example of how the opposite can be true at the same time. So you had a young woman who was starting out her career. She looked the part. She had all the right clothes. She was surrounded by the right people. She had built the right networks, but deep inside she was battling, not only the violence that she was experiencing in her relationship, but she was almost trapped in this legal system and in this contract that prevented her from growing in her career and from working with other people. And I think that happens, and that's happened more times than we know. And I think the difference is that today there's a lot more empowerment around the image that you create and project, or the career that you can build for yourself, whether it be through social media, whether it be, through creating your own content. And so there's a lot less reliance on labels and industry, leaders and managers in terms of helping you develop a successful career. Now, I can speak on this because I remember being in my teens and seeing kind of being in that era where Cassie kind of burst onto the scene with her new song, and it was big, and it was everyone was playing it. It was huge. And a few years later, I had gone from kind of just singing in the choir to writing my own songs. And at that time, I met a record producer who produced a few songs for me at the time. And, he said to me, we could do so much more. We could, approach labels, approach management, and kind of really take this further. And I remember at the time thinking, yes, I really do want to do this, but I still don't know enough about how it works to kind of jump in head first and sign a contract. And so he sort of said to me, well, to go further and to move to the next level, I want you to sign this management contract. I will become your manager essentially, and I will be in charge of all your affairs, and I will be entitled to this. And I said, yeah, sure, send it over. Let me have a look. And he wasn't actually a music manager. He was a music producer, but he was acting as manager. And so I took the contract. I went to seek advice from a music lawyer at the time. And I said, can you have a look at this contract and just let me know what you think? And he came back to me and he said, the terms of this contract are very restrictive and I would not advise you to sign it. And that was kind of all I needed to hear at that moment, because even though I had a desire to take this, this hobby and this talent to the next level, I was very, very apprehensive about making the wrong decision or tying myself into a commitment that I would regret. And so I refused. I said, no, I don't think this is right. But I would still like to continue working with you and producing songs, and even if that's me paying for the work. And he sort of said, actually, no, I don't think that's going to work. We either sign the contract or we don't. And I think so many people have been in that situation in maybe in rooms with bigger names, and they felt under so much pressure to just kind of say yes and accept what's being offered. And I think that in that moment, I knew that it wasn't right for me. And I made the decision to walk away from that. And I got firsthand insight really into just how difficult it can be as a young artist that's trying to find your feet and make your name, to stand your ground in situations like that. And I think the only reason I was able to do it was because I'd sought advice from a third party.
Yeah, I think the reason why the music industry is in the mess that it's in is because people just don't know how to say no or stand their ground, or they don't have a support system or someone who's wise enough to guide them. So they go into this big, flashy industry, which underneath has so many compromises and so many things that you have to say yes to. And I think that's really hard for people. And I think people don't realize that a lot of the time the music that's released goes through a kind of process where it's almost put through stages and put through lots of scrutiny in terms of meeting the particular agenda, whatever that might be. I mean, what I would just say is, in terms of Billie Eilish, I mean, I listened to a few of her songs and I thought, this is a talented young lady, she writes. And just listening to some of her songs on repeat, and very slowly you could go into depression very quickly.
Yeah.
Like, there is a depressive spirit over those songs. There's a real darkness there. And I think all of these songs all have an assignment or a mission, whether it's immorality, materialism, greed, whether it's being a gangster, whether it's being sad, happy. They all have a kind of mission to manipulate the mind. And music is so hypnotic. We're like A, B, C, D, like it just sticks in your brain. So I feel like music is on that mission to really hypnotize and manipulate the mind of people. And we've got to be smart to understand when that manipulation is negative, so that we can, avoid falling victim.
I learned through hearing, which means that anything I want to remember, if I sing it, I am going to remember it. If it's a song, it is going to stick. And I think people are starting to understand the power of music and how, really just how strong that force is as an impact on people's thoughts, feelings, emotions, behaviors, like you've just said. And I think when I think about how I feel about music now, I've definitely looked at that industry a long time ago and thought that's not something I want to be a part of. Like, it's just too much. But at the same time, I'm still...
It's like the smart people leave, don't they?
Yeah, they do. And I think I still have, I still have a passion for music. I still enjoy writing songs. But I think the way that I view that now is very different to like how I viewed it, when I first started singing, because everyone says, oh, you do this and then you get noticed and you get a record deal. And actually it doesn't have to be like that. You can just, write what you care about, and make music because you enjoy it, and share that with the world on your terms.
And that's the beauty of social media. You can share anything. You can record anything that you want and share it. And I think, the realization about a lot of these industries is that, all that glitters is not gold. It's like chasing shadows. It's not real. And I think when you come to a maturity level where you understand that the flashy, glamorous situation, that's not really how it is, then you can be less hard on yourself. And you can start to just enjoy your life and enjoy your goals without feeling like you have to fit into a particular industry. I recall I had a dream some time back, and a man was sat at the back of a limo, a really wealthy man, but he seemed quite sinister. Like, you could say it was Lucifer, if you've seen that show. And I looked at his chest. He had a jacket, and he kind of opened his jacket, and his chest was basically a piano, like a full piano all across his chest. And I thought, that's so strange. And I woke up and I thought to myself, what does that mean? And, I started kind of doing some research on it, and I realized that, that music industry is controlled by, some very dark entities that are in power, that are very wealthy and elite. It's not necessarily controlled. The industry is not controlled necessarily by people with good agendas.
Well, I'm not sure what inspired you to have that specific dream, but there is a biblical reference, for example, to like Lucifer before he was cast down to earth, when he was an angel in heaven, having like ribs and organs actually made
of
instruments. And so
really? Okay,
that's instantly what I thought of when you said that. I tend to have a lot of dreams, but my dreams tend to take a slightly different kind of angle. There's one particular person who's quite famous and has been in the music industry for a long time and is quite established in that sense. And I've had several dreams over the years about that person, each dream being different, but there was one recurring theme in that dream.
Which person was that?
And it's someone super famous. But what I want to highlight is the context of the dreams that I had. And in every single dream, I think there were about 4 of them that I can vividly remember. And in the first one, I had a dream about this person kind of walking towards like a river or a seafront, and they were with what looked like maybe a bodyguard or some kind of assistant. And so I was just watching from a distance, and then they walked into the water right into the middle of the seashore and started like I don't know if I would say like chanting or like doing some type of like what looked like worship. And then as that was happening, like light and sparks were emanating from this person.
I've heard a lot about that.
And I turned around because I could feel like there was heat emanating from whatever was going on there. And I remember turning my face away because I wanted to not have direct contact with the heat or the energy or whatever was emitting. So that was one dream. In another dream, the same musician was like in a massive empty stadium. It was huge. It was empty, kind of like old Roman Colosseum. And the person said something along the lines of, "I'm a god now," something of that nature. And I just remember waking up and thinking, that's so strange. Like, why am I dreaming that? And that's 2 of 4 dreams. And it's a different scenario every single time.
I think a lot of people are aware that, in the industry, there's a lot of, hypnosis and witchcraft that goes on. And it's to amass control and manipulation. And I think it's definitely something that I think the young people need to be aware of, because they tend to be, vulnerable because they listen to music the most. They're always into the latest releases, the latest, Spotify trends and all that kind of thing. So it's just about really being able to protect your mind and your spirit from what's coming out.
Yeah. I'm glad we had that chat.
We're so happy you made it this far, but don't stop there. Subscribe to our channel so you can see episodes as soon as they drop. Thank you.